Yo, how's everybody doing today? Swagkage here, and welcome to today's video where, as you can tell by the title and thumbnail, we're going to be talking about Rock Lee versus Neji Hyuga. So I did a poll over on Twitter, and at first, this was actually in last place, but eventually it ended up pulling ahead, and like a couple hours into the poll, it became very clear that no fight was going to overtake this one, and that actually surprised me because I think the answer is pretty obvious, but clearly people want me to talk about it, so here we go. Now, unlike my last solo versus battle video, which was Guy versus Pain, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time breaking down the abilities of both characters for two reasons. The first is that I'm gonna have to split the fight into two different rounds. The first being part 1 Lee versus part 1 Neji, and the second obviously being Shippuden Lee versus Shippuden Neji. Here's the thing, right? Like, both of these characters, neither of them really have a whole lot of feats. Lee only really has his fight with Gaara to speak for what he's capable of in part 1, and Neji doesn't have too many fights of his own either. He has his fight against Hinata where he stomps her, and you don't really get to see too much of what he's capable of because he's just fighting against another gentle fist user. Then he has this fight with Naruto, which is actually a pretty important one for scaling him, and I'll talk more about it in a bit. And then he has this fight with Kidomaru, which is, it's not too important, but it does add a bit to the discussion pre-time skip. Then in Shippuden, neither of them really do anything anyway, so there's not a whole lot for me to evaluate there. Basically, this is just gonna be me talking about the abilities that you already know they have. I mean, pretty much everybody knows what Neji has up his sleeve. You know, he's got rotation, he's got 64 palms, and Shippuden he's got like air palm and all that. Lee has the 8 gates, he has the primary lotus, the reverse lotus, you know, all that stuff. He's never shown to have the ability to use a Sakujaku, though maybe he can't, I'm not really all that sure. But, you know, for the most part, it's just gonna be Lee using a whole bunch of punches and using like his insane crazy speed to try and catch Neji off guard, and Neji trying to use the gentle fist to shut down Lee's chakra points. So how would this fight go? Now, I'm just gonna be upfront with everybody, right? In part 1, Lee tears Neji apart, and it's not really even close, like a little bit. A very common rebuttal I'm gonna see people throw my way, like immediately. I'm sure plenty of people are already typing it out, is, but Swagkage, obviously you don't know what you're talking about. Lee sparred with Neji all the time, and he got his ass kicked, and Lee himself said Neji was way stronger than him. So, well, yeah, all right, look, buddy, here's the thing about that. There are a lot of ways to prove that Lee was stronger than Neji by feats alone, and as everybody knows, feats are more important than statements in a versus battle. But on top of that, that statement was definitely in reference to base Lee versus base Neji. Like, yeah, obviously Neji is stomping base Lee. Like, ooh, what a big deal, big bad Neji. Take it out with a fucking fodder character who couldn't even fight fucking like Dosu and Zaku. And I say it was definitely in reference to base Lee, maybe Lee with like the first gate open because he probably attempted to use the primary lotus on Neji. But I know for a fact this statement was not in reference to Lee with the third gate, fourth gate, or fifth gate open, because when Neji saw Lee using the gates in his fight against Gaara, at least the gates that actually transformed his body, turned his skin red, all that juicy stuff, he was shitting himself, right? He looked at Lee like he was a total stranger. He was like, there's no way this is the same kid that has been on my team for the past year, right? Like, this just doesn't make any sense. Where did Lee get all this power? He's very surprised by the fact that Lee is capable of tossing Gaara around like a rag doll, despite the fact that nobody should even be able to damage this guy. So once we get that statement out of the way, let's talk about why Lee is objectively faster than and stronger than Neji. Well, first of all, I'm pretty sure that you can't fucking argue that Neji is faster than third gate Lee, fourth gate Lee, or fifth gate Lee. It's just like Kakashi had to lift his headband and start using his Sharingan to observe Lee's movements, and he didn't have to do that in the battle between Neji and Hinata. Now, granted, Neji might have been holding back against Hinata, but Naruto with the QB cloak was able to keep up with Neji, and this wasn't Naruto with the tailed QB cloak, or even with his whiskers exaggerated and his eyes colored red. This was the weakest form of a QB buff Naruto could receive, and he was still able to keep up with Neji's speed. As a matter of fact, he was able to overpower him, but I'll get into that later. So the fact that this Naruto was able to keep up with Neji should definitely show you that Lee is much faster than him. If you want to try and tell me that this Naruto is fucking faster than Lee, like, whatever, man, but that's an insane fucking claim if I've ever heard one. Now, just because Lee's faster than Neji doesn't necessarily mean that he will win the fight, right? Like, you know, if Neji's strong enough to deflect Lee's attacks, like with rotation per se, he can outlast Lee with the fourth or fifth gate open and attack him while he's down or while his body is recovering from the recoil damage, right? And, well, no, Neji will not be able to tank any of the hits from Lee. As a matter of fact, I'd go go so far as to say that if not for the fact that Gaara had cushioned himself in the Chunin exam preliminaries, he probably wouldn't have been knocked unconscious. I think you can say with confidence that this kid would have fucking died. At the very least, his durability is crazy, and I certainly can't see Neji tanking the fucking full power reverse Lotus, right? But even if you want to make the argument that Lee won't even be able to hit him because Neji can just use rotation, that's not true either, because the same Naruto that I was talking about earlier, who certainly isn't stronger than 5th Gate Lee either, was able to overpower Neji's rotation with a fucking kunai knife. He was able to cancel it out. If like borderline base Naruto can do that and then go on to one-shot Neji, there's no way he'd survive a barrage of taijutsu attacks from Lee, even with like the 3rd gate open, much less the fucking 5th. Now, I did think of a counter-argument that you can make with regards to this fight, and that is that Naruto, without the extra 9 Tails chakra that he received during the battle against Neji, was able to damage Gaara in his pseudo Jinchuriki form. And, well, yes, Gaara in his semi-tailed beast state was damaged by Naruto, but this was by 2,000 fucking clones attacking him at once. Before he summoned all of those shadow clones, Gaara was fucking ragdolling Naruto. He made him look like a total bitch, and there was nothing Naruto could do against him. It was after he summoned those clones that he was finally able to do some damage to Gaara, and even then, he almost died. He got caught in a sand coffin, and if he hadn't summoned Gamabunta, then he would have gotten crushed to death. Plus, it's also pretty easy to argue that Gaara was weakened, as he just tanked a Chidori, and had even been nicked by one when he fought Sasuke in the arena. And now, obviously, Gaara was just fine after this. He was still able to stand up and fight. It wasn't like he was gravely injured from it, but again, you can't argue that maybe he was weakened, and that's why Naruto was even able to damage him in the first place. Now, I think the final nail in the coffin for Neji pre-time skip is the fact that during his battle with Kidomaru, he was, for whatever reason, unable to use rotation in time to deflect the arrow that nearly killed him. And I mean, this thing came really close to ending Neji's life, without a shadow of a doubt. In order to save him, the Leaf had to get this crazy medic circle where all of these medical ninja had to keep swapping out every few hours and just pouring like all of their chakra into this combination jutsu just to save this boy's life. Like, this arrow was serious business, so you would think that knowing this, because Neji's a smart guy, I guarantee that he would be able to figure out if this arrow were to pierce him, he'd be done for, especially because in the fight, he does see just how fast and strong it is, like, firsthand. It pierces a tree right next to him, and he looks pretty terrified of it. Point is, you'd think Neji would want to stop this thing, and he would know better than to let it hit him, right? So why didn't he use rotation? There are two explanations for this. One, he wasn't fast enough to do it, or two, he thinks he could use rotation to stop it, but it wouldn't be strong enough to deflect the arrow. There is a third possible explanation for it as well, I guess, and that is that Neji didn't have the sense of timing that he needed in order to precisely deflect such a fast-moving and hard-hitting projectile. But in any of these three cases, that means that there's no way he's going to be able to use rotation to stop Lee from kicking him into the air and just beating the shit out of him the same way he did to Gaara. So I think that seals the deal for Neji here. Now, I know what many of you are probably going to say, and that is that Neji intentionally let himself get hit by the arrow because he needed to grab a hold of it so he could transfer his chakra across the cord and damage Kidomaru with the gentle fist from a faraway location, because there was absolutely no way he could get close to him when A, he didn't know his location, and B, he was being constantly assaulted with projectiles. Not to mention, Kidomaru kept moving from place to place, so there was really no way Neji was going to get a grasp on where he was. I guess I could go even more into detail about the reasons Neji needed to land this long-range gentle fist attack, because there are more of them, but that's not necessary. The main point is that Neji needed to hit Kidomaru from far away, and transferring his chakra along the cord attached to the arrow was the only way he could do it. Now, the thing is, hypothetically, there's nothing stopping him from using rotation to deflect the arrow, then running towards this arrow, grabbing a hold of it, and then sending his chakra across it. Why would he let himself take a lethal blow if he could still avoid getting hit by the arrow and manage to secure the win against Kidomaru? Maybe you can argue he didn't have enough chakra to perform a rotation, which is a fine argument, I guess, but in the manga version of this fight, Neji really didn't do a whole lot to expend his chakra. I guess he did have a lot of it siphoned from standing in that Earth Dome when the Sasuke retrieval team encountered Jirobo, but then again, Kiba and Shikamaru didn't seem to have this problem. They were fighting as if their chakra reserves were full, and all Neji did was launch a couple 64 palms and use rotation a couple times. So like, why would he already be out of chakra? At the very, very, very least, I'm under the impression that if he didn't have enough chakra to perform rotation, but using it would have been enough to deflect the arrow, he would have said something about it in his head. Something along the lines of, darn it, if only I had enough chakra to use rotation, I'd be able to stop this thing. But he didn't say that. It's just all of the pieces of evidence lead me to believe that Neji wouldn't have been able to stop this arrow. And I know for a fact, with the third gate open and with the fourth gate open, Lee hits a lot harder than one of Kidomaru's arrows do. And really, nothing else Neji has up his sleeve is relevant here. I don't think there's any way that he'd be able to hit Lee with the 64 palms. Heck, Gaara's auto reflex sand shield couldn't even keep up with Lee when he dropped his weights, much less opened the third, fourth, and later fifth gate. It's just really hard to argue that Neji would be able to move anywhere near that fast. And I just think that he'd be completely overwhelmed by Lee's ridiculous speed and strength as soon as he opened even the third gate. So with all this in mind, Part 1 Neji does not stand a fucking chance against Part 1 Lee. That's without even getting into all of his, like, fucking bullshit auto reflexes with the goddamn drunken fist, making Kimimaro, this, like, Jonin level fighter, look like a total goddamn joke. Now, I know a lot of you guys might be saying I'm being biased here, and no, I have spent days, like, actually the past entire week, looking into this fight because of the fact that I really wanted to know if there was anything Neji would be able to do, and quite frankly, there just isn't. He doesn't have any way to react to Lee crossing this, like, no, okay, actually, the distance he crossed against Gaara wasn't really, like, it wasn't, like, that crazy. It's not like he traveled across an entire, like, football field or anything. It was probably a couple meters at best, but if he starts, like, 10 meters away from Neji and then he opens the fifth gate, I mean, there's really nothing Neji's gonna be able to do about it. He'll try in rotation, and Lee will, either one, Lee will hit Neji before he can even use rotation, or he'll overpower it the same way Naruto did, and there's really no way you can argue Neji comes out of this unscathed. And even if he does shut down Lee's chakra points, now I don't want to say this is like a 100% confirmed fact, but I wonder if opening the gates reverses the effects of having your chakra points shut down, as it causes all of that blood to start flowing through your body, causes your heart to pump faster, all that other stuff. I mean, it probably doesn't, but, you know, you could maybe make a case for it. At the very least, I see it being a possibility. You know, maybe opening the gates might reinvigorate Lee's body the same way that Kurama giving Naruto his chakra did after he was on the receiving end of the 64 palms. But, you know, it's not something that I'm going to cling on to in an argument. I just think Lee is far too fast for Neji to handle, far too powerful for Neji to handle, and he doesn't have anything up his sleeve that he'll be able to take Lee out with. Lee's just not the right opponent for him. So now we move on to Shippuden, and for those of you hoping the answer would change here, it doesn't. And so you guys all know how much I love my man Madara. Alright, now I'm not trying to, like, wank Madara or anything in a video that really has nothing to do with him, but I just like to put this panel of Lee fucking blitzing him and kicking him in half up on the screen. And Madara had fought some pretty fast folk up to this point, if I do say so myself, but he just wasn't even able to react to Lee. And again, he got totally bisected by him. Just a single kick, cut in half. Now, like, it's worth pointing out, it would be very dishonest of me if I didn't point out that this was when Lee was given one of Naruto's nine-tailed chakra cloaks. But, I mean, I'm pretty sure that everybody would agree with me if I were to say that even if you did give him a buff like that, Neji's not doing anything nearly that crazy, but that's no surprise. The point of the Gentle Fist isn't to cause a lot of physical damage. It's called the Gentle Fist for a reason. It's a very subtle fighting style. It deals with internal damage as opposed to external damage. But Neji's ability to shut Lee's chakra points down with the Gentle Fist here doesn't really matter, because if he gets hit by one attack from Lee, he's fucking finished. Lee one-shots him on impact, and that's really the end of the discussion. You want to look me in the eye and tell me that Neji's gonna tank a kick like that? Really? Fucking seriously? Nah, I'm not hearing it, buddy. I guess I probably shouldn't use a piece of evidence from the last here, but if you watch the last, there's this part where, granted, it is with a bit of assistance, but Lee punches a fucking meteor apart with the sixth gate. And now, alright, so the last happens 2 years after the end of Shippuden, and that is a comparable gap in time between the end of Part 1 and the start of Shippuden. Shippuden happens 2.5 years after Part 1, so, you know, there's a pretty big gap in strength there. But, I mean, I don't even know if I really want to use this as a point in Lee's favor. I just wanted to show this fucking clip because of how ridiculous ridiculous it is that Lee punches Meteor apart. But if you do want to use it to try and make a case for the fact that Lee is strong enough to one-shot Neji, well, the fact that he was able to get to this point in 2 years where he is casually busting meteors with his bare fists, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that he's capable of taking out a guy who got killed by a piece of projectile wood with attacks amplified by the 6th gate. Attacks so strong that with a little bit of help, he was able to kick fucking Madara Uchiha in half. That's just my 2 cents. Alright, let me make it clear really quickly that I'm just memeing around with that whole, yeah, he got killed by a projectile wood thing. He had to protect Naruto from it, so if it would have killed Naruto, it would have killed, like, any other member of the allied shinobi forces. Getting killed by this doesn't really make Neji look too bad, but what does make him look pretty questionable as a shinobi is the fact that he and the rest of the Hyuga family were struggling with a bunch of fodder-ass white Zetsu. Meanwhile, you have Lee kicking Madara in half. So this wasn't a very long video. It didn't take a whole lot for me to reach the conclusion. I'm sorry, I didn't really go too much into detail about Neji's abilities, how he has air palm, 64 palms can shut down all of Lee's chakra points, but none of it really matters here just because of how goddamn fast Lee is and how goddamn strong he is as well. If you have any questions and you have any counterpoints, of course, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to see some because I'm clueless for ways that Neji might be able to beat Lee here. So if anybody has like any really solid arguments to present, again, leave them in the comments below. I'd love to see them, and if I disagree, I'll respond to them, and if you get me with something that I actually don't have any legitimate response to, I'll be like, well, hey, congratulations, dude. I guess you win. But, yeah, that's gonna be all from me today, so until my next video, talk to you next time. Swagkage out. Bye.